Have you ever found yourself stuck in endless conflicts with people? The arguments that repeat, the misunderstandings that never seem to end. It feels draining, doesn't it? But what if I told you, over 2,000 years ago, the Stoic philosophers faced the same struggles, and left us timeless strategies to deal with human problems without losing our peace of mind? In our modern world, relationships can be the greatest source of both joy and suffering. Misunderstandings, criticism, betrayal, or constant demands, these issues often leave us stressed and emotionally exhausted. But the Stoics Marcus Aurelius, Seneca, Epictetus remind us that while we cannot control other people, we can control how we respond. And in that response lies our freedom, our peace, and our strength. So today, let's uncover 8 Stoic tips for solving problems with people so that instead of being consumed by anger or resentment, you can approach every relationship with clarity, resilience, and inner calm. Lesson 1: Care less about opinions. You know, for most of my life, I cared far too much about what other people thought of me. Their opinions, sometimes just a passing comment, a look, or even silence, could shape the way I felt about myself. If they approved, I felt valuable. If they criticized me, I felt small. Does that sound familiar to you? Maybe you've been there too. At work, at family gatherings, even among friends, we often find ourselves adjusting who we are just to avoid judgment. And when we cross into our 40s, 50s, or 60s, it can feel even heavier, because the expectations of society, of family, of community, keep pressing down. But here's the truth I had to learn the hard way: most people are not thinking about you as much as you believe. They are too busy with their own lives, their own struggles, their own insecurities. And yet, we hand over our peace of mind to them as if their words were absolute truth. Marcus Aurelius, the great Stoic emperor, once said, "It never ceases to amaze me, we all love ourselves more than other people, but care more about their opinion than our own." When I first read that, I stopped and thought, how many nights have I lost sleep over someone else's opinion? How many times have I silenced myself, or bent my back just to fit into someone else's mold? Let me tell you a story. I remember years ago, I was at a family dinner. One relative looked at me and said, almost casually, "You should have done more with your life by now." That single sentence followed me for weeks. I replayed it in my head over and over, as if it were a final judgment on my worth. But later, I realized those words said more about his own regrets than about my life. He was measuring me against his yardstick, not mine. And that's when the shift began. I started asking myself, whose approval truly matters when I lay my head down at night? It's not theirs, it's mine. It's my values, my integrity, my effort that I must measure myself by. Caring less about opinions doesn't mean being arrogant or dismissive. It means living in alignment with your own principles, so you can stand firm even when others don't understand. It means saying, "This is who I am, this is what I believe, and I will walk this path with dignity." And something remarkable happens when you live this way. The right people, the ones who value you for your true self, are drawn to you. And the ones who only like the mask you wore, they fall away. And that's not a loss, it's freedom. At our age, we don't have time to waste on living someone else's version of life. We've seen enough, we've lived enough to know that opinions come and go like the wind. What remains is the quiet approval of our own heart. So let me leave you with this: tonight, when you go to bed, don't replay the opinions of others. Instead, ask yourself, did I live today true to my values? If the answer is yes, then you are already free. Now, as we move forward, there is something deeply connected to this idea of freedom from opinions, and that is honesty. Because when you no longer live for the approval of others, you find the courage to be truthful, both with yourself and with those around you. And that is where our next lesson begins. Lesson 2: Be honest. After we learn to care less about people's opinions, something powerful begins to happen. we find the space to live more truthfully. And that brings us to our next lesson: honesty. You see, honesty isn't just about not telling lies. It goes much deeper than that. It's about whether your actions, your words, and your inner values all point in the same direction. When they do, there is a sense of peace that no applause, no approval, can give you. Let me share a moment from my own life. Years ago, I worked in a job where everyone pretended to be fine. Meetings were filled with smiles and polite words, but under the surface, there was frustration, even resentment. One day, I decided to stop playing that game. I spoke openly, not to attack, but to be transparent. I admitted where I was struggling, and I admitted what I didn't know. For a moment, there was silence in the room. But then, something unexpected happened. Others began to open up too. Honesty, it turned out, was contagious. Epictetus, one of the great Stoic philosophers, once said, "If it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it." Simple words, but think about how liberating they are. When you choose honesty, you don't have to keep track of lies. You don't have to carry the heavy burden of pretending. Dishonesty is exhausting. It ties you to fear, to anxiety, to shame. But honesty frees you. And it's not only about honesty with others. It begins with honesty with yourself. Ask yourself, do I admit my weaknesses? Do I acknowledge my mistakes? Do I allow myself to see the truth, even when it hurts? This is not easy. Sometimes it means facing the fact that we have failed, or that we've hurt someone. But every time we face the truth, we open the door to growth. I remember once apologizing to my son for losing my temper. It wasn't easy. I wanted to defend myself, to justify my behavior. But when I chose honesty, when I simply said, "I was wrong," something beautiful happened. His eyes softened. The wall between us disappeared. Honesty didn't make me weaker in his eyes, it made me human. And that brought us closer. Honesty builds trust. And trust is the foundation of every meaningful relationship, whether with family, friends, or colleagues. Without it, connections become shallow, filled with doubt. With it, even difficult conversations can strengthen the bond between two people. Of course, being honest doesn't mean being harsh. It doesn't mean throwing truth like a weapon. True honesty, in the Stoic sense, is guided by kindness. It is speaking truth with the intention to build, not to destroy. So how can you practice honesty in your daily life? Start small. Speak truth in simple things. Admit when you don't know the answer. Acknowledge when you've made a mistake. And most importantly, look in the mirror and tell yourself the truth about where you are, and where you want to go. At our age, we don't have time for masks. We don't have the energy for lies. We've lived long enough to know that authenticity brings more peace than perfection ever could. So tonight, when you reflect on your day, ask yourself, was I honest? With others, and with myself? If the answer is yes, you are already on the path of freedom. And as we carry this truth within us, we must learn the next step, not letting the words or actions of others wound us so deeply. Because even when you live honestly, there will always be someone ready to misunderstand or criticize. That's where our third lesson begins. Don't take things personally. Lesson 3, don't take things personally. Even when we learn to care less about opinions, even when we choose to live honestly, there will still be moments when someone's words cut deep, when their actions feel like a direct attack on us. And in those moments, it's so easy to take things personally. I know this feeling well. There was a time when a close friend forgot to include me in an important gathering. My mind immediately went wild. Did I do something wrong? Did they stop caring about me? That night, I could hardly sleep, replaying the scene over and over. Only later did I discover that it wasn't about me at all. He was dealing with his own troubles, and his forgetfulness was simply a reflection of his heavy heart, not of my worth. Seneca, the Stoic philosopher, reminds us that people act not from how we are, but from how they are. Their anger, their silence, their harsh words, they come from their own history, their own pain, their own fears. It's like everyone walks through life wearing a pair of glasses that tint everything they see. And sometimes, we get caught in that lens, even when it has nothing to do with us. Think about it, how many times have you snapped at someone because you were tired, stressed, or carrying a burden they didn't know about? Did it mean you stopped caring about them? Of course not. It meant you were human. If we can see that in ourselves, why not extend the same grace to others? When we stop taking things personally, we set down a weight we've been carrying for too long. We stop letting every careless word, every cold look, pierce our peace of mind. Instead, we remind ourselves, this might not be about me at all. But how do we actually practice this? The Stoics teach us to pause. The next time someone's words sting, take a breath before reacting. Ask yourself, do I know the full story? Or am I assuming? That small pause creates space for wisdom to step in, instead of anger. Another practice is to remember what is truly in your control. You cannot control what others say or do. But you can control your response. And sometimes the most powerful response is simply letting go. Not everything needs your energy, your explanation, or your fight. This doesn't mean allowing people to mistreat you. Boundaries are important. But it does mean you no longer let their behavior define your value. You recognize that their words belong to them, not to you. At this stage in life, after 40, 50, 60, we realize time is too precious to be wasted on carrying grudges or replaying insults. Why give someone else the power to control your heart? Why let their fleeting emotions decide your peace? So tonight, if you find yourself holding onto someone's harsh words, remind yourself, I don't have to carry this. Let it go. Free yourself. And as we move from this lesson, we begin to see the deeper practice that ties all of this together, patience. Because once we stop taking things personally, we can meet people not with quick anger, but with calm endurance. And that's where our next lesson will take us. Lesson 4, be patient. After learning not to take things personally, the next natural step is learning to be patient. Because even when we no longer feel wounded by others' words, life still tests us with delays, misunderstandings, and difficult people who seem determined to push our buttons. Patience is not about passively waiting. The Stoics saw patience as strength, an active choice to remain calm, steady, and present, even when everything inside you wants to react. I remember one evening, stuck in traffic after a long day at work. Horns were blaring, people were cutting in line, and I felt my chest tighten with frustration. But then I thought of Marcus Aurelius, who wrote, "If you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it." In that moment, I realized it wasn't the traffic that was making me miserable. It was my response to it. So I turned down the noise, rolled down the window, and allowed myself to simply be there. The cars didn't move faster, but my experience changed. Instead of anger, I felt a quiet acceptance. That was patience in action. The same is true with people. When someone speaks harshly or disappoints you, the first reaction is often irritation. But what if, instead of reacting, you gave yourself a moment of patience? That pause creates space to see their struggle, to understand their pain, and to respond with wisdom instead of anger. Seneca once said, "No man is crushed by misfortune unless he has first been deceived by prosperity." Patience reminds us that challenges, delays, and conflicts are simply part of life's natural rhythm. They do not crush us, they train us. Every moment of waiting, every trial of endurance, is an opportunity to strengthen the muscle of patience. Think about the seasons of life. In our youth, we often rush, chasing after recognition, success, approval. But as we grow older, we begin to see that some of the richest moments come not from rushing, but from waiting, watching a child grow, nurturing a relationship, even allowing time to heal wounds. These things cannot be forced. They unfold in their own season. At our age, patience becomes a kind of wisdom. We've seen enough to know that storms pass, wounds heal, and anger fades. And when you choose patience, you carry yourself with a calm that inspires respect. People may not always notice your quick words, but they will always remember your calm presence. So how do we practice patience? Start with awareness. The next time you feel irritation rise, notice it. Breathe. Remind yourself, this moment is temporary. I cannot control the pace of others, or the outcome of every situation, but I can control my response. That's where my power lies. And here's the gift: every time you choose patience over frustration, you grow stronger. Just as a muscle grows with exercise, your capacity for patience deepens with practice. And with it comes a calmer mind, healthier relationships, and a lighter heart. So tonight, ask yourself, where in my life can I choose patience instead of anger? Maybe it's with a spouse, a child, a colleague, or maybe with yourself. Because sometimes the hardest person to be patient with is the one in the mirror. And once we've cultivated patience, we're ready to move to the next step, not just holding calm for ourselves, but becoming a living example for others. That is where our journey will take us next. Lesson 5, Be an example. Patience teaches us to hold steady in the storms of life. But the Stoics also remind us that our actions don't exist in isolation. Every choice we make, every response we give, shapes the people around us. And that's why the next lesson is so important: be an example. Epictetus once said, "Don't explain your philosophy. Embody it." Those words strike deep, because they remind us that people are not persuaded by speeches or arguments nearly as much as they are by the quiet evidence of a lived life. I think of a neighbor I once had, an older man in his 70s. He wasn't wealthy, he didn't hold any important title, and yet everyone in the street respected him. Why? Because of the way he lived. He was kind without needing recognition. He was patient with children and courteous even when others were rude. He didn't preach about values, he simply practiced them. And in doing so, he left a mark that sermons could never achieve. At our age, many of us have children, grandchildren, or people who look up to us in the workplace. They watch us sometimes more closely than we realize. And what they learn is not from what we say, but from what we do. When you stay calm in an argument, they notice. When you choose honesty over convenience, they remember. When you live with integrity, refusing to compromise your values, they carry that image in their hearts. Being an example is not about perfection. It's about consistency. It's about trying day after day to live in alignment with what we believe, even when no one is watching. In fact, it's often in those unseen moments, when you think nobody will notice, that your true character shines brightest. I recall a moment with my own son. He once asked me, "Dad, why do you always say thank you to the cashier, even when they're rude?" I hadn't even realized he noticed. But in that small act, he was learning something. Respect is not about how others treat you, it's about who you choose to be. And yes, we will fail. We will lose our temper, we will make mistakes. But even then, being an example means showing how to recover with grace. Admitting when you are wrong, apologizing, and choosing to do better, that too is part of the example we set. Marcus Aurelius wrote in his Meditations, "Waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be. Be one." It is a reminder that talk is cheap. The world doesn't need more debates about virtue, it needs more people quietly living it. So, how can you practice this? Begin each day with a simple reflection: what values do I want to embody today? Maybe it's kindness. Maybe it's courage. Maybe it's patience. Carry that intention with you, and let your actions flow from it. Because in the end, your legacy will not be the words you spoke, but the life you lived. And someone, somewhere, maybe a child, a friend, or even a stranger, will carry a piece of your example forward long after you are gone. And once we've learned to be an example, we must also learn how to protect that inner strength from the noise of negativity. Because no matter how well you live, there will always be critics, doubters, and haters. That is where our next lesson leads us. Lesson 6, Tune out the haters. When you begin to live as an example, something interesting happens. People notice. Some will admire you, respect you, and even be inspired to change. But others may criticize, gossip, or even try to pull you down. And that brings us to the next lesson: tune out the haters. Marcus Aurelius spoke of the inner citadel, a fortress inside your mind that no one can break into unless you open the gates yourself. This image has always stayed with me. Because the truth is, negativity from others will always be there. But whether or not we let it enter, that is our choice. I remember when I first started making changes in my life. I wanted to be healthier, calmer, more focused. And surprisingly, some of the sharpest criticism came not from strangers, but from people close to me. "Why are you wasting your time on that?" they said. "You'll never change." For a while, their words shook me. I doubted myself. But then I realized, their criticism wasn't really about me. It was about their own fears, their own discomfort with seeing someone else grow. And that's often what hate is. A reflection of someone else's struggle, projected onto you. When you see it this way, their words lose their power. Instead of piercing your heart, they bounce off the walls of your inner citadel. Now, let's be honest, it's not always easy. Words hurt. Rejection stings. None of us, no matter our age, are completely immune. But with practice, you can train yourself not to give away your peace so easily. The Stoics remind us, you cannot control what others say or do. You can only control how you respond. If someone throws poison, you don't have to drink it. If someone throws stones, you don't have to carry them. So how do you tune out the haters in practice? First, learn to pause. When you hear criticism or negativity, don't rush to respond. Take a breath. Ask yourself, does this come from truth, or from their pain? If it is true, use it to grow. If it is only venom, let it go. Second, choose where you place your attention. Fill your life with voices that uplift, not those that tear down. Read words of wisdom, spend time with people who encourage you, and create an environment that nourishes your soul. The world may be loud with negativity, but you can choose which sounds to let into your heart. And finally, remember that your worth is not determined by their approval. The Stoics teach us to measure ourselves by our own values, not by the applause or criticism of others. When you live in alignment with your principles, you stand firm, no matter how strong the winds of gossip or hate may blow. At this stage of life, after 40 or 50, we realize that time is precious. Why waste it on voices that only want to drag us down? Better to spend our energy on love, kindness, and building the kind of life that matters to us. So, if you ever feel crushed by someone's words, imagine that fortress inside you, the inner citadel. Its walls are built of patience, integrity, and self-respect. And nothing, no insult, no rumor, no criticism, can breach those walls unless you allow it. And once you've built that fortress, once you can keep the negativity outside, then you are ready for the most surprising Stoic lesson of all, that even in the midst of struggle, we can live with love. And that is where our next step leads us. Lesson 7, Be full of love. After learning how to build your inner citadel and tune out the haters, you might think the Stoics would tell us to close ourselves off completely, to harden our hearts so nothing can hurt us. But the truth is, Stoicism is not about coldness, it's about balance. And that's why the next lesson is so powerful: Be full of love. At first, this might sound surprising. Stoicism is often seen as discipline, reason, control. But if you read Seneca carefully, or listen to Marcus Aurelius, you find love running through their words, not the shallow kind, but a deep, active love for humanity. Seneca once wrote, "Wherever there is a human being, there is an opportunity for kindness." Imagine if we lived with that at the center of our hearts. Every interaction, no matter how small, becomes a chance to give something gentle, something kind. Let me share a moment from my own life. There was a cashier at a grocery store I often went to. She was always short-tempered, always rushing people. For a long time, I avoided her line. One day, by chance, I ended up there. Instead of reacting to her coldness, I decided to look her in the eye and simply say, "Thank you. I hope your day gets better." For the first time, her expression softened. And the next time I saw her, she smiled. That tiny act of love, it didn't change the world, but it changed the moment. That's the Stoic approach to love. It's not about waiting for the perfect people or perfect situations. It's about offering goodwill to everyone, even those who seem hard to love. Because when you do, you lighten their burden and yours. Being full of love also means forgiveness. Not the kind that excuses wrong behavior, but the kind that frees you from carrying bitterness. Holding on to anger only poisons your own heart. Letting go, choosing love instead, creates space for peace. And love doesn't only apply to people. The Stoics also teach us to love life itself, to embrace it with open arms, even with its twists, its losses, its imperfections. To wake up each morning and be grateful for the simple things, the warmth of the sun, the laughter of a child, the comfort of a friend. This too is love. At our age, we know how quickly time passes. We've lost people, we've seen relationships fade, we've witnessed how fragile life can be. And that makes this lesson even more urgent. Don't hold back love. Say the kind word. Give the embrace. Show appreciation today, not tomorrow. So how do you practice this? Start small. Offer kindness to strangers. Show gratitude to your family. Pause during the day and notice the beauty around you. Ask yourself, are my actions rooted in love, or in fear? In kindness, or in resentment? The more you choose love, the lighter your life becomes. Being full of love doesn't mean being naive. It doesn't mean ignoring injustice or pretending life is easy. It means choosing the higher path in the face of difficulty. It means letting love guide your actions, even when anger tempts you. And once you begin to live this way, you'll notice something: love comes back. Not always from the same people, not always in the same way, but it finds its way back to you. Because the energy you give to the world has a way of returning home. So tonight, ask yourself, did I choose love today? If the answer is yes, even in one small moment, then you are already living this Stoic wisdom. And yet, there's still one more trap we must learn to avoid, something that robs us of peace, love, and gratitude. And that is comparison. Which brings us to our next lesson. Lesson 8, stop comparing yourself to others. After learning to fill our lives with love, there's one more enemy we must face, an enemy that quietly steals our joy every day. That enemy is comparison. It's so easy, isn't it? We scroll through social media and see someone else's success. A bigger house. A better job. Happier children. More vacations. And suddenly, what we have feels not enough. At work, at family gatherings, even within friendships, comparison creeps in like a shadow. But the Stoics warned us against this long ago. Epictetus said, if you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid. Why? Because when we live chasing someone else's approval or someone else's path, we lose sight of our own. I remember a time in my 40s when I saw old classmates buying new cars, building bigger homes, traveling the world. Meanwhile, I was still trying to pay bills, raise my children, and keep my head above water. For a while, I felt like I was behind, as if life were some race and I was losing. But then one evening, I looked at my daughter doing her homework at the kitchen table. She smiled at me, and I realized, this moment this simple life was mine. And it was beautiful. Why should I measure it against anyone else's story? Marcus Aurelius reminds us, it is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more, that is poor. Comparison is craving. It blinds us to what we already have, and it robs us of gratitude. So how do we stop comparing? First, become aware. Notice the moment you start looking at someone else's life and feeling less. Catch yourself in that thought and ask, what am I grateful for in my own life, right now? Gratitude is the antidote to comparison. Second, remember that people only show you what they want you to see. Social media is not reality. Behind every smiling photo, there are struggles unseen. Everyone carries burdens you cannot imagine. So why compare your full, complicated life to someone else's highlight reel? Third, measure yourself only against who you were yesterday. Did you show more patience today? Did you speak more kindly? Did you live closer to your values? That's the kind of progress the Stoics valued, not wealth, not status, but virtue. At our age, we've seen enough to know that life is not a competition. There is no finish line where someone hands out trophies. Each of us has a unique path shaped by our joys, our losses, our lessons. Comparing paths only distracts us from walking our own with dignity. So tonight, if you find yourself looking at someone else and thinking, I'm not enough, pause. Breathe. And remind yourself, my journey is mine. Their journey is theirs. And both have value. When you stop comparing, something amazing happens. Peace enters your heart. Gratitude fills your days. And love, patience, honesty, all the lessons we've learned together begin to flow more naturally. And that is the essence of Stoicism, to free yourself from what you cannot control, and to live each day in alignment with what truly matters. So, my friend, as we close this chapter, let me ask you, what will you choose to measure your life by? The noise of others, or the quiet truth of your own heart? Conflicts will never disappear. People will frustrate, disappoint, and even hurt us. But the Stoics remind us, the problem is not them, it's how we choose to respond. By caring less about opinions, practicing honesty, not taking things personally, showing patience, living as an example, tuning out negativity, leading with love, and abandoning comparison, you transform not only your relationships, but your entire life. If this message resonates with you, take a moment to reflect, which of these 8 tips do you need most right now? Share it in the comments, I would love to hear your thoughts. And if you found this video meaningful, please like, subscribe, and continue walking this journey of Stoic wisdom with us.